In today's video, I actually wanted to talk about what doing the work actually looks like. I know in a lot of videos that I looked up, they talk a lot about the how, like how to do the work, like how to do shadow work and what that may entail. But I feel like I haven't been finding a lot of videos that kind of break down what it feels like to be doing the work. And the reason I want to talk about this is because in my last video, I talked about the privilege of processing, and in this video I kind of want to delve in more about what it may look like to be in process. So for a lot of us, you may not have grown up with being taught emotional regulation, what emotional intelligence is. So a lot of the times we feel really lost. I actually want to delve in what it looked like to work through anger. For me, growing up, a lot of the times in certain environments or certain neighborhoods, anger is usually rewarded. If you grew up in survival mode, when you step outside of that, of course, those emotions or can turn into outbursts, into a very reactive personality that doesn't actually help you kind of take on day to day, right? When you go to work, when you're dealing with relationships, when you're no longer in that environment. So you want to start dealing in a better way, but you may not know how or how to like express yourself, or like I mentioned before, have learned that emotional regulation. Emotional regulation allows us to be able to regulate, obviously not just anger, but a lot of different emotions. And if you struggled with any emotion, with let's say anxiety or anger, and that's been hard for you to control or regulate, you may struggle when you become an adult and you're really not even sure of that you'll be able to. For me, the very first step was actually recognizing that I needed help, that when it came to anger, that was one emotion that was really hard for me, understanding and recognizing that there is an issue when it comes to an emotion. It may feel overwhelming, and a lot of the times like you have no control. For me, when it came to anger, it just felt like a snowball. Like once it started, there was no way of me controlling it. And the second thing for me that started working is making a goal and having a why. My number one goal is that I recognized that I wanted two things in my life. I wanted peace and I wanted freedom. And in order to have that peace for myself in my life, to start creating and attracting that environment, was having that emotional regulation of having control over my own emotions. The second thing is I wanted that freedom. I didn't want anger to control me any longer. Keeping that in mind, I started to work with a therapist, and I remember her telling me that even on those moments where I felt like I was failing, like I felt like anger had gotten the worst of me, that I had to remember that now I had the recognition and I had the awareness that when it was coming up, even if I couldn't control it, even though sometimes I went from 0 to 100, that at least I now recognize that it was an issue, and I was recognizing when those emotions were coming up again, even though I felt like things got out of hand or I wasn't able to control it. So that was the first step. The next step was that I started attracting people in my life and even around me where people were able to hold space for me. People understood that I was really trying to change, that I was not just doing the work, right? Which is doing my research, being a therapist, looking at my emotions, learning what emotional intelligence was, what emotional regulation was, but I was actually learning to go and take accountability for my actions, talk about how I was feeling, and let them know how I was going to move forward to start making changes in my life. When it comes to what does it actually look like to do the work, do that shadow work, to really be in it, one of the examples that I can think of is when I was dating someone. I know that we would be in an argument and I would just lose it. Things would get out of control and I would have to step away, and that kind of became my go-to. Instead of just having these outbursts and being very embarrassed because I couldn't control my anger and I said things that I shouldn't have said, I started again saying, you know, what is my goal? My goal is to no longer step away, but actually when I'm in it and when my emotions are coming up, I want to be able to control them. I want to be able to walk through them. So I think it's very important to look at your surrounding and look at your relationships and have those people and actually take a look for yourself. Do I have those people in my life that now reflect the growth that I'm doing in my life? Do I have people that hold space for me? Do I have those people that hold me accountable? Am I able to hold myself accountable? I no longer take things so personally, and I'm able to have that positive feedback when it comes to talking to people about my anger and how the situation might have turned out. So again, when I was in it and I was in that relationship, I remember this argument, and all of a sudden I was like, I'm getting angry, and I felt these emotions coming up. So I asked my boyfriend at the time, I'm actually gonna step away, just give me a few moments. And I actually went into the restroom and I started breathing. I remember breathing in and out, and at first it was really difficult. I didn't even think like I was gonna be able to do it. I'm like, this feels so silly, it kind of feels so ridiculous. And sadly, it just felt really normal for me at times to just have my outbursts so that I fed that ego, that anger. But I no longer wanted to be that person. So again, I was in the bathroom taking breaths, and I also did another exercise that my therapist had given me, which was the 5 senses, where you look at 5 things, and this is also a form of grounding yourself. You touch 4 things, and I believe is you hear 3 things, you smell 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 thing that you can taste. Even right now, I have a lot of anxiety when it comes to making videos like this. I'm new to this channel, and I'm also someone that deals with anxiety. Anxiety is a very big part of my life. Whenever you decide to put yourself out there like this and do something new, your anxiety will come up. But again, I look at my goal. My biggest goal is that I have a disability right now, and I'll even show you. I have my little cane right here, and it helps me to be creative, to put myself out there, to show myself that I can do scary things. And it's really important to show my community that you can do scary things, that your anxiety, your anger doesn't have to have control over you. It's so important to speak to someone, to speak to a professional, to build around you a community that helps support and love you. A lot of the times you may not have that right away, especially when you're starting your journey, but it's so important to be your first advocate, to recognize what is going on around you, seek professional help, and then you'll notice that the environment, not just you, but the environment around you will start catering to your self-evolution. But definitely let me know below if this video was helpful, if you've ever had any emotion that has overwhelmed you and it's something that you've been wanting to work on, and maybe share with all of us what actually has worked for you.